Yeah, I just want to make sure you're getting good quality audio on your end.
Heck yeah, man. How do
I'm well known for causing audio issues.
All good, brother. All good. So what? This is just totally random. This isn't even related to Lumra. Like, what got y'all to start recording stuff? Like, I was honestly just curious.
I don't know what the story was for you guys, but me and Logan, we're big hobby guys. We're both I think I'm in my late 20s, he's in his early 30s. And so we work, we hang out. But then we all, we just have this hobby that we're really passionate about. So driving to work, listening to a CEDH podcast, doing nothing at home, watching CEDH games, playing CEDH games. And then you just start running out of content. Like, there's only so much to consume. And so the vast majority of what was available at the time that we started recording was like tournament breakdowns.
Yeah.
Which are like really, really cool. But also I feel like if you're playing, a lot of like tournament level CEDH, there's a lot of minor shifts that aren't always well represented in top 16 breakdowns. So there is this desire to like see more content just that we could consume. Mm-hmm. And so essentially it was just like, well, we talk about CEDH a lot, we talk about the things that we're interested in a lot. Maybe other people are as well. And so I think we've really enjoyed getting to be a part of, I would consider kind of like the second wave of CEDH content. I think you guys are a part of it as well. Mind Over Meta, Double Sleeved. Mm-hmm. You've got a lot of channels, that's a good card, kind of coming up post like Comedian, Lamora's, CEDH TV. I think a lot of us who kind of, and I don't know if this is you guys' story, but people who kind of got into CEDH either near the tail end of COVID or coming right out of it, and who have kind of gotten their start in like the last year or so. Mm-hmm. It seems like there's kind of like a new wave of like CEDH content creators that I would consider ourselves a part of. I don't know if that's what it was like for you guys.
Yeah, we like whenever we first started getting into CEDH, I think Chase had been into Magic and like CEDH and stuff, like probably like when it like early got started and everything. I didn't get into it until I think, like you said, like the back end of COVID. I like growing up, and I'm talking like when I was like young kid, I was going and playing like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments and stuff like that.
Heck yeah.
And so I had a ton of fun doing that. So like I would go, and I'm trying to think of when I got into competitive Yu-Gi-Oh. I think it was around like 2011, 2012. So I was young at that point. I was probably only like, what if it was 2011, then I was literally 12 years old. So like I was young, and I was going to tournaments, and I was going and like grinding, doing stuff. And then I eventually just got tired with like the way the format shifted. So I eventually like jumped off of that and started judging events. So then same thing as like a young kid, I was going to events and getting paid to judge. So it was cool. But then eventually like all of my buddies, I'm like literally like 5 or 6 of them, they all just jumped ship and immediately hopped on to Commander. And I was like, dude, I will not play Magic. Like, I'm not going to do it. And then, yeah. So then one day they eventually like built me a deck. It was just, they asked me what I wanted to play. And like when I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh a lot, one of my favorite decks was Light Sworns, which is like, I've obviously like changed a lot of my profiles and stuff now, but it used to say like Rogue Sworns 101. And so I was making YouTube videos even as like a kid where I would take different decks and stuff for Yu-Gi-Oh, like different archetypes, and I would try to make them work with like the shell of the Light Sworns. Well,
interesting. Okay,
it was a lot of fun. Now it sounds terrible. I sometimes will go back and watch those old videos, and I have like even worse of a drawl, and like I sound even more country, so it was just bad.
Yeah, I think the first YouTube stuff I started doing was I used to be part of a Team Fortress 2 team. And so I would do like random like animations in Source Filmmaker. And as like 11 or 12 years old, I'm like, I think I'm the best to ever do it. And now I look back and I can't unlist it like fast enough. I think, or like me and my brother were like doing some like random bossing in Guild Wars 2. And I'm like, sheesh. Now I look back and I'm like, no. So I'm very, very, very thankful that Logan is just a technological marvel. I think that if anyone's interested in doing anything YouTube content creation wise, they really need someone who knows the nuts and bolts. And it seems like you guys got a really, really great setup. And so yeah, I really, really enjoyed getting to watch your stuff, especially the tournament breakdown you guys just did of the European circuit was really, really fun. Because I think that's also part of it as well for us is because you guys are Kentucky. Yeah, I think you guys truly have appreciation for this. As cEDH kind of like moves around different parts, not just of the states but the globes, it acquires like a new flavor to it.
Yep.
And so we playing in Denver, you have access to like a lot of top players, but we didn't hear people talking about it much. There was mostly like the kind of East Coast, West Coast, kind of like cEDH, Seattle, or like California, or like the New England style stuff. And we're like, well, you got a ton of players in Denver. No one's really talking about it. So I also love getting to see that, players in your neck of the woods who, you guys have tournaments. You guys have people who have, you've been around, maybe not Magic for like decades, but you've been around card games for a while. And so your perspective and the way that you experience cEDH is super duper important to me. And I'm so glad that more and more voices and more people are finding representation in the online content creation space.
No,
yeah, that's how it got started is for a few months, Logan was like, man, I feel like I see what other people are doing. I feel like we could do it too. And then he won Snowy Summit, and then we started just striking while the iron was hot. I think the first video we put out was him doing a tournament breakdown of his own list.
Nice.
And then it just kind of like took on a life of its own from there. I'm sure very similar to like you guys, we've tried like a bunch of different stuff, and so we've tried to lean into, if you have the Venn diagram of like what we like making and what people like watching, we try to like go about as straight down the middle as we can.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I honestly think that's one of the fun things about cEDH is like, it's kind of like what you were saying, everybody experiences it just a little bit different. So you get different perspectives from like each content creator that you watch. Like I've got buddies that live out in like Salt Lake City, and the way that they experience the game is like totally different than like the stuff we'll see around here, and vice versa. So like I think that's really, really cool. And also it's funny to see like how the meta and stuff, like obviously like Blue Farm and like the top decks are still like typically the top decks, but it's funny to see like the includes and the things that will shift as you like jump from like location to location. Like that's something that we've noticed. Like we'll cover an event that's like way West Coast, and it will be like a lot of the includes will be like totally different than some of the stuff you're going to see like over here East Coast, or even like the international like meta. Like if you go to like some of these other countries, they'll have some wild lists. So it's pretty fun to see.
And yeah, like so like in Denver, we like to joke about it, but like the Denver Secret Tech is like consecrated Sphinx, because we are like at our most enlightened and our like least mature selves. Either way, we're like mid-range grinders out here.
Yeah.
So in one way, shape, or form, you're just gonna try and shove as many card draw engines in. But when the Critical Crew went down and we played at Heisenberg and Albuquerque, we were noticing that there were like so many like vexing baubles and curse totems. And it's like I think because over there you've got people go just a little bit faster, which means instead of trying to get on top of like mid-range hell, as people colloquially call it, people try to get underneath it by turboing.
Yep.
And so just these like little like 1 or 2 card includes, like you look through deck lists and you just see it 1%, 2%, 3% more than if you were to look at all the lists in like Portland or in Boston or something. And so I think it's super super cool, and it's part of what makes me really really happy that you guys are around and are doing what you're doing.
Heck yeah, man. No, that was what was funny is like I've had camera like stuff just to be able to make videos for a while, and then I just quit making videos, and I'm seeing all the cats wander over. But like I had the stuff to make videos, and we never ended up making anything for the longest time. Like I didn't even know Chase until literally like maybe 2 months before the podcast actually started coming out.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I felt like it was like similar to how like Dylan and Cam from Play to Win, like they just met because I think they met because like they're significant others, and then eventually they just like started producing content. But I met Chase actually at a tournament. We play obviously in the same local scene, but I don't even think we had a game together. Like we hadn't played at all. We went to a tournament over in Nashville, and I like completely scrubbed out of that event. I did terrible, man. And he actually did pretty decent. And we all of us, like I knew most of the people in the group except for him, and he knew the same thing, like a lot of the people in the group except for me. So we all went to go get pizza, and we were standing in line ordering pizza, and he wanted it was something, it was silly, but like he wanted a certain type of pizza, and I was down to for like the exact same thing. So I think we ended up just like splitting a pizza. So we're sitting there and we're like sitting around this one pizza, forced to talk to each other, and he makes a comment about wanting to make like CDH videos, and I was like, hey man, I have all the stuff to make CDH videos. And immediately from there, it was like, let's do it. Like, why not?
Awesome. That's so serendipitous. Heck yeah. Good things can happen from scrubbing out of tournaments.
Heck yeah, dude. Oh, it was so bad. I went in. Oh, yeah. It was good. It was fun.
No, we've all been there. I was just talking about this with Austin last week of like, it was really funny because the first time me and him met was at a tournament. I went 0-5. And the way he remembers it, I remember he's like, no, you definitely won our first game. And I was like, I can confidently tell you I did not win a single game that day. And I'm glad we can laugh about it now because I definitely was not laughing about it on the drive home.
Dude,
for sure.
I was sitting there. I remember heading home after that event, just being so upset. Like I was, and again, it wasn't my deck's fault. It was 100% me. I feel like people have a tendency to blame the deck, which obviously if you're playing something that's just super fringe, that's like nowhere near CDH, like maybe you can blame the deck. But even then, it's still like you have to. It like some of it's on you. So like.
Because even if it's like, for instance, our conversation originally got started around Lumra, and it was Lumra that I went 0-5 on. I think, I could have walked away and say like, oh, if only I'd been playing Blue Farm, I wouldn't have gone 0-5. I would have gone 5-0. But like, I made a decision to bring it, and then even if you want to make amends for like, well, I'm playing a fringe list. Am I like doing my due diligence to like parse the data that I'm getting as I'm playing it and saying, well, oh, I lose to like Blue Farm a lot. I need to start teching and building my deck so that I'm good into a meta matchup. Yep. But if I'm building a fringe deck with the expectation that I'm playing against other fringe decks, I'm only good against other fringe decks. I definitely have a part to play in going 0-5.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that, and that's the thing. I think that's obviously like, I don't know how to explain. Like, I feel like that's where you learn the most is like when you do go to events and you just do terrible. Like every time I come home from something like that, I immediately am just like, okay, that was 100% me. What can we change? What edits can we make? Like, how can I get better as a player? Things like that. But no, dude, it was so fun. But yeah, I remember going home and literally like I was looking at Zur because I've been on Zur since I got into CDH, and so I just love that deck. And so I was staring at Zur and I was like, what do I do here? And one of my buddies was like, well, technically you could just add red and play Blue Farm. And I just sat there and I thought to myself, and I literally had this, like, it was like two paths. And I was talking to Chase at that point too, because he even said like, you could play Blue Farm, and I had two paths. And I was like, do I want to be somebody who wins, or do I want to be somebody who wins with Zur? And I was like, I want to be somebody who wins with Zur. I don't care about winning with Blue Farm. So at that point I was like, we're locked in on this deck. And sure enough, like it started getting a little bit better. Like I went from like no wins to like, oh, I got one little win, or like then you go again, you're like, oh, I got another win. And then eventually I started being able to go to events and being like, oh, I almost made top 16. And my goal for this year was like, hey, I want to make top 16. And I went to an event. I ended up getting like 6th place in the event. And I was like, booyah, we got there with Zur. Now it's like, now I want to I want to get top 16 with Zur on an event that's like bigger than 100 people. So that's going to be like one of my new goals. But
dude, that's awesome. I love that so much because I think I both truly believe that like mistakes are an opportunity to like learn.
Oh yeah.
And that some of the most fertile ground that we can have as we're trying to like grow and mature into like our most like holistically like self-actualized like selves as like CDH players is right like the battlefield of defeat. Because it's just ripe with lessons of like I shouldn't have countered this, I should have mulliganed that. But also it is really easy for it to either be a big ego hit or a self-esteem hit. And I think setting like achievable goals of like, okay, my goal isn't to become the world's best Zerg player. My goal is like, I have access to a lot of like really good Esper players around me. I want to talk to the Tivit players. And so, I want to figure out what makes Zerg different than Tivit. Or like you said, I want to get one win. I want to consistently be walking away from tournaments with one win. Or I want to make top 16 or any of those. Instead of starting with like, I'm going to take down Max Sternberg, Freedom, Evan Waffle, Pierce, and Jason Doan all in one game, and they're all going to say, Eric, you're the best CDH player we've ever met. That I would say is a relatively unachievable goal, at least as I can tell within my lifetime. But if I set the bar at like, I want to like make top 16 once. That is way more achievable. I think it's going to give you way more options and granularity to then evaluate yourself as a player and say like, like I did really well. I think I did just get unlucky. I think I lost to variance a little bit and not have it just be like absolutely like huffing copium.
Bro, that's yeah. No, you're
the amount of time I've been to amount of tournaments, I'm sure that like if me and you had $1 for each time we heard someone say, "Oh, if only I had another turn," we could hang up our hats and just retire right now, bro.
Dude, I was just talking to Ya from That's a Good Card about this. Like me and him were chatting last night about it, and I literally said that I was like, dude, the number of games that I lost in this event where I literally like I had a silence effect and I had win in hand, and I was like, I just needed to get back to my turn. And then it never got there. I was like, I would be a rich man if like I had $1 for every time that I've had a game like that. I was like, But yeah.
But I think that's such a great example of like, I think another somewhat shallow level observation, not inappropriate, not incorrect, but shallow observation you hear a lot of players say is like, oh, I should have mulliganed harder. Well, for what? Just take it one step further. Oh, if only I got another turn. Why didn't I get another turn? That those are the type of things that like I've noticed that it's not that it's incorrect that like if me and you got more turns, we'd get more wins. But if we want to grow, let's ask the question of like, why are we always a turn behind? Because surely it can't always be that we're always in fourth seat, although it may feel like that sometimes. And so one thing I've had to notice is it that I'm not getting another turn, or is it that I'm not noticing my windows when they're there?
Man,
especially as an Esper player, I mean, you've got like so many options. Universal tutors scare me. I'll be honest. Whenever I'm like looking down the barrel of the demonic tutor, I'm like, frick me, dude. I've got no idea what I'm supposed to get.
Dude, it's so crazy because like I feel like obviously me and Chase makes fun of me all the time because I crutch so hard on like silence effects because I get so scared to like that's something I'm trying to work on a little bit better right now is like finding those windows to jam even if I don't like have a protected silence win. So like I've got to get better about that. I get way too like gun shy, and then I'm really really bad about just I don't know, like sometimes you get a little too like trigger happy whenever you'll see something and you're like, like I need to stop this thing from somebody else rather than just like my best games are when I'm able to like actually sit there, say I'm sandbagging interaction. I know when I should interact, even if it's like some weird fringe deck. Oh, excuse me. That like I'm not used to, just being like, hey, I'm cool. Like this doesn't look like a win right now. I'm fine. Like until I see like this opportunity to where like, hey, I need to interact right here. Like we'll do it. But until then, like I'm gonna be patient, take my time, and I'm trying to get a lot better about doing things like that. I actually did a little bit of coaching with Ian at the start of the year, which was really fun.
Oh, nice.
And dude, he's so smart. Like it's insane how good he is at this game. But I was talking to him, and honestly, like I think the biggest thing that changed the way that I perform at cEDH was literally just like the mulligans. Like people talk about how important mulligans are, and it's such an easy thing to just overlook. But he literally was like, it was just the way that he explained it that like it just made it click for some reason. He's like, if you literally think about like what you're doing when you're mulliganing, like let's say on average, like a cEDH game may end like turn 3 to like maybe we get really late grindy game. We're going to get like turn 6, turn 7, something like that. He's like, if you're drawing like, you're going to draw a card for the turn each of those times. And then like, let's say maybe you have a value engine and you're drawing some extra cards. He said, realistically, you're going to see probably like 7 to, we'll say like 14, maybe 21 cards throughout the game. Mulligans literally account for like half to a third of all the cards that you're going to see for the game.
Yeah.
So, dude, after that, I started taking mulligans way more seriously. And then that allowed me to play the game, which then made me better at playing the game. Like, there were so many games where you just didn't have a good hand. You couldn't really, you just kind of were sitting there dirtling because you really didn't have anything. And maybe you get a win because you just get a lucky top deck or something like that. But like once you actually start mulligan appropriately and you're actually like being proactive in the game, you start realizing like, oh, wow, like it really is just like repetitions and like just playing the game. Like that's the best way to learn, in my opinion. Just play CEDH.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. I think I've heard Tim and Austin kind of describe it as these like level up moments, which it sounds like you kind of had, and where I think coaching can be really, really helpful. Is and if you talk to any coach, they'll say, oh, coaching isn't like I'm going to like win more button, but it's much more of a like depending on the type of coaching you receive and where you're as a CEDH player, more likely what you're going to see is either elevating the ceiling that you have as a player or the floor. And I think I was definitely in a situation kind of getting to like talk to Jason sometimes of feeling like I had started playing a whole new game. Like paradigmatically, I just like now see CEDH in a different way. And for me, that's a good indication that like the floor of just how bad I can play is, not 1% less bad than it was. Like I can still play pretty poorly. But the goal is, now you're not just mulliganing with the first turn in mind. You're now mulliganing with the last turn in mind.
Yep.
Because you're right. Like if it's a 3-turn game and you don't have a draw engine, you keep 5. You're going to draw 3 cards. You are looking at 5 of the 8 cards you're going to see that game. Yep. And I feel like a lot of people don't think of it that way. Because then you start thinking about like, oh, if I like draw a land. And like, I don't, is that like, is that really the axis you want to hinge your victory on? Especially after you've been ruthlessly cutting lands to put counter spells in. Like, I think it's one of those ways where I think the further on people move into their kind of like CEDH careers, I think the less valuable heuristics can be. Instead, you need to like rely on those like instincts and those practices developed by rigorous practice and tournament experiences. But I think early on, some of those early heuristics can be super valuable. For instance, one like only counter spell if it wins the game. That not that it is a like meaningless statement, but I think the more you play CEDH, I think you realize the harder it is to answer the question if a spell wins the game. Like if Kinnon's casting, they've got a Seedborn out. They've got a Fairy Mastermind out, and they're casting a Finale of Devastation where X equals 4. Are they getting like a clever impersonator to get someone's like Smothering Tithe, right? Because that's a combo.
Yep.
Or are they just like bluffing and they're really going for a value flip collar? Or have you gained enough context clues based off of playing with them to know that they have no idea what they're doing, and they don't know that like they don't know that Enduring Vitality only costs 3 and they just could have paid that much instead. And so all these different ways, like one spell can mean so many different things. And so I think early on, like you can only handle so much information. So like someone can meaningfully say, unless it's Thassa's Oracle, probably don't worry about it. But then the more and more you play, the more granularity and specificity you're able to have in those situations. Which means while the initial question may be much harder to answer, the answer that you do come to is that much more meaningful and something you're able to take action on.
Yeah. Well, dude, and that's the thing that's really funny too, which I'm sorry, I know we were originally going to talk about Lumra and I still want to. We totally got off the deep end, but I like this conversation. But no, like it's funny because it's literally like you said, like I feel like not enough people will like, and it's not their fault. Like it's something you get better at, like as you play the game. So like, and I'm guilty of it too. So I'm not like hating on anybody, but I think that it's important to just look at the board and say again, like what does this card do here, or like what could it do here? And like there was a game I had the other day where again, like the game where or the tournament I played in where I got 6th. Like I was setting pretty, man. Like I was looking good. I even had, I think I had, I want to say like I had a silence effect in hand. I think it was Voice of Victory. I had Zur on board, so I was going to be able to swing, go get Phyrexian Unlife. I had Adnaz in hand. Like I was feeling like really good. So I was like, I'm potentially like going to win this game. And I was like, I'll make top 4. It'll be fine. And then there was like the Kennen player in the game made a comment. They were casting a Court of Calling, or they were going to cast a Court of Calling, and they were going to go get Seaborn Muse, or I think it was Cord, but they were going to go cast it and get Seaborn Muse. And I was pretty much okay with it, because I was like, yeah, this does stink, but they didn't have any, like, they didn't have One Ring, they didn't have any like other crazy value engines on board. I was like, you know, you're potentially looking at like maybe a Kennen activation, but I knew that they were already on like the good cards Kennen. Like they may flip into something that's decent, but it's probably going to be like some, you know, like dorks, things like that. And I was like, okay, like I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to let other people interact here. Like this will be fine. And man, it was not fine. They went, they went and got off the court. They got a Gilded Drake and took my Zur. And I was like, oh, well, what do you get here? Like a Rhystic Study? Like I'm just super confused. And I think even in their mind, they were like, I'm going to go get a Rhystic Study. You know, it's fine. Like they're keeping me off of a value engine. It's fine. They go and they swing with Zur, immediately put Freed from the Real in on a Bloom Tender and just win the game. Yeah.
That's crazy. I think, you know, I think this is a really good transition to Lumra, because one of the things that Lumra taught me is, because I think it was probably one of the first decks that I like grinded for a really, really long time. I think I've been playing it longer than I've played any other deck. And so it's mono green landfall. So obviously cEDH S tier, right?
Absolutely.
See, so it is really, really good. We've taken the deck really, really far. But when I first started brewing it, I think I had an experience that a lot of other people had. This idea of like this chip on a shoulder where it's me against the world. And so, you know, just kind of like assuming that like every other deck in the pot is going to be better than me. So I don't have to worry about like any counter spells or any interaction, because there's always going to be like a Kennen or a blue farm. But then I ended up in these situations where I'm thinking about other people's boards, assuming that other people are thinking about other people's boards, not recognizing that I'm doing stuff that demands interaction. And so when someone's, you know, tutoring for a demonic tutor, I'm like, oh, are they getting breach? Are they getting intuition? Not recognizing that, like, oh, if I let this through, they're getting interaction for me.
Yeah.
And I think that could be another area that it can be difficult to cEDH players. Is if I don't want to speak for yourself, but if you have a lot of experience losing a lot, you may not be familiar with being in like the arch enemy, right? And so that was I had to suddenly I discovered there was way more interaction at tables than I thought there was when I started like being better and occupying the like dominant position at the table more. And so when I was putting Lumra together, I originally had much greedier list than I have now, because I'm like, oh, everyone with all these counter spells is just going to interact with each other and then leave me alone. But as I got the list to a more streamlined, more competent place, I now realize that in a good way, I was forcing people. They can't you know, tutor for Rhystic Study anymore. You know, they're not getting a Seedborn, but instead they're getting something that stops me. And I think that can also be another big level up moment, is either your first time at a tournament or even just in a game where the entire time you are in like the dominant position and it's always a 3v1 and you're always the one.
Now, so like you were saying though, with just as far as like transitioning into Lumra, how did you get started on the deck? Like I know, like I remember whenever I think I had even commented on like the stream that y'all had for Mortal Kombat, and I asked you like what your favorite colors were, and I remember you saying green was like one of your favorite colors. Were you just looking for like a mono green commander to play, or what got you started on the actual deck?
So great story. I think that I started the way many people start in cEDH, which is a little too connected to my casual roots and my brewer's heart. So I received the advice that everyone gets. And they say, you know, let's play a deck that's strong in the meta. You can always brew whatever you want after. Just get a feel for the format before you jump in and start throwing cards in the 99. And I heard great, well-meaning advice. I did absolutely nothing with it. I went to NBC Autofill and I printed out Kali of the Vask, Mexican Boo, and Orvar. And I was like, surely between one of these, there's gonna be a hit. There's gonna be a banger. Fast forward like 3 months later, failing miserably on all of them. They're fun, they're cool, but I'm always just getting absolutely bodied when playing online in Spell Table. And they can do cool and unique things, but I feel like I'm always just right behind the 8 ball. So I'm still playing Orvar because out of the 3, it's having the most fun. You get to do some crazy, quirky stuff. And so I'm playing in Spell Table. And then that's how I first came across Alec. Blooper had been spoiled for like 48 hours. He had already put a list together in Moxfield. Very, very different than where we are now. I think he was only in like 30 or 35 lands or something at the time. But I played against it, and it was so unique and it was so interesting, and it was almost impossible to interact with. And I thought to myself, well, I play some off-meta decks. Brewer's Advantage is real. I'm sure once people understand how it works, then it'll be super easy to silver bullet this big bad bear. But after playing like 3 or 4 games with them, it just seemed like the deck was always doing the impossible in a way that even though I'd only been playing cEDH for about 2 or 3 months at that point, and I hadn't seen anywhere else. So I messaged him on Discord afterwards, and I was like, dude, you have to send me this list. This is so interesting. And it started with like, I was like, I refuse to lose to this list again. I was like, I will become a student of this stupid deck, and Orvar will never lose to this pair again. But the more I looked through it, the more and I think this can happen with a lot of pilots, a lot of lists. After looking through it at Moxfield, I think it got a kind of a feel for how all the internal worked with each other. And then I started messaging Alec, and he's like, no, I hadn't. And I was like, well, what about this card? He's like, I have considered it, tested it, and it's really bad. And I was like, bad. And then so we just started messaging back and forth. I printed out. And then it's a ton of fun, and kind of connecting it to our earlier conversation. Even when I lose on it, I have this sense of like pride in how the deck performed that then inspires me to not just go back to my list, but kind of pour over the game and think of like, what are the ways I could have played differently, or what are ways that the information I needed was right there, but I didn't grasp a hold of it, or I didn't say this, or I didn't listen to that. And you have this like fringe deck that is performing well enough that I'm not just like inviting myself to lose every game I play, but I'm also losing in a way that inspires me to keep improving and growing as a pilot. So me and him play it for a little bit, and then we both keep having this experience of people being like, what the heck is this? So I was like, dude, we got to put a Discord together. Like we keep answering the same questions like 3 or 4 times. Like let's just put a Discord together. And then I go to Moxfield. I search by Commander Lumra, Bellow, the Woods. I think you can still see this if it's out there. And then I went into every person who had brewed a Lumra list. It still wasn't spoiled yet. It was still like 3 or 4 months from being released. And I went into the comment section on Moxfield, and I was like, hey, we're putting a Discord together. Come hang out with us. And then you fast forward about a year later-ish. We just hit 1,000 members in the Build-A-Bear workshop is what we ended up naming it. We got so many good cards coming out for Edge of Eternities, and it just has continued to be this, pun somewhat intended, an evergreen deck for me. In that, I think a lot of people who play it have this experience of it being a very dynamic, off-axis deck. That even though it's not strong in the traditional ways that we see cEDH decks being strong, specifically card advantage and mana advantage, and we can get to more about the specific ways in which Lumra gives mana advantage. But even though it's not strong in those ways, it's still strong in its own way. And while it's unique and novel, it still continues to perform well, even when people figure it out. I think a lot of people have had that experience that I've had of, you watch YouTube videos, you read the primer, you're like, okay, I get it. Shouldn't be that hard to spot. But then you play against it in real time, and it just moves so fast and is very like dynamically able to respond to threats. But also, and I think this is what me and you were talking about. It's not uncommon for the 99 of Lumra to be relatively unintelligible. What's Archaeological Dig doing in here? I've never played Vesuva before, but I'm pretty sure it's not a cEDH card. That's how I picked it up. That's been a lot of my experience playing it. I would love to hear, as someone who is playing CEDH around the same time, as someone who was like playing an Esper, what was your experience of it? Either its impact on your meta, or just like colloquially, what was like the first time you heard CEDH deck called Cocaine Bear?
Dude, so the first time that I actually got introduced to Lumra was whenever I played against it. It was in the same place that Pull Priority was just at, so over at Game Nights. It was the first time that I went down, and I didn't really get to see the deck perform. I was the guy again, like I'm the Esper control guy. So like I think in our pod it was like a Lumra that was actually in seat 1. There was Blue Farm in seat 2. Abby that plays Kirik. She's really popular with that. So Abby was in seat 3 on Kirik, and then I was in seat 4 on Zur. And this Lumra player just starts playing like all these weird cards, and I was like super confused. I was like, "What is this deck doing?" Like I had heard about it, but I was like, I don't understand what this is. So then the Blue Farms is just like he I think he had to mull low, so he wasn't really like a huge help in trying to interact with the deck at the time. So like I kind of was just like I remember being so locked in on the deck because I was like, it was the thing I was the most worried about, because we have local like crick pilots and like other stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm not too worried about this. Like I'll know when to interact here. It's Blue Farm, you kind of know when to interact. So I was just like so fixated on this dude's deck, and he just starts doing the Lumra thing, like starts milling and doing the thing. And I just kind of asked him, I was like, I'm debating something right now. I was like, do you just win here? And he was like, yeah, if you don't stop me. He was honest. So I was like, oh man. So I luckily, dude, I had the Force of Will in hand and I was able to stop it. I was like, I appreciate you being honest. And he was like, don't worry. He's like, if it gets back, if I get another turn, I win. And I was like, oh God. So it was so bad. So everybody immediately starts being like, draw, like trying to take the draw. And it was so good. But it was fun. So after that, I was like, I'm gonna look into this deck. And then of course, like I didn't end up doing too hot in that tournament. I think I probably went like 1-4, I think, for the day. So like 1 wins, 4 losses. So I totally forgot about the list whenever I left. Like it wasn't on my mind anymore. I was like more worried about like, man, I got to fix Zur, I got to do this. Like I need to get better as a player, yada, yada, yada. And then eventually I came across the deck again. I think it was actually the Cocaine Bear deck. And it was like right around the time where like y'all were really starting to blow up too, just as far as like content creators. I had joined y'all's Discord and I saw the deck and I was like, dude, I've actually got to like dig into this deck and like understand it. And I just went and like just completely like one shot, just sat down and like went through your whole primer, started reading, like was watching the videos of you demonstrating stuff. And afterwards I was like, I still feel no more confident with this deck than I'm going into this. So immediately, I think that was whenever I texted you and I was like, hey, what is this doing? And then you were like, here, join the workshop and like just start diving in and looking.
Yeah, we actually have a couple different primers floating around. There's another community member who has specifically made one just to keep track of all the different combos. And I think at some point we're going to end up in like a Magda situation where we're just going to have like a meeting of the minds and just put some like 80-page document together. But yeah, as is not uncommon for monocolored decks, there is since we can't quite keep up with the card quality of like a Blue Farm Reserve, you have to have a level of like layering, which means, since every card can't be an S tier or an A plus card, you need to be able to staple essentially like 5 or 6 B- effects to the same card, which then results in some like weird cards that, for instance, like Blossoming Tortoise, that then can start really, really overperforming once you learn all the different pathways they have to other cards in the deck. But you said you had a couple questions. And so, I'm an open book, and I would love to answer any questions that you have about Lumra, Bellow the Woods.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So like, so I did write down a couple things. So like, I noticed like in your version, you made like you had said that there are typically like a couple of directions people will take it. Like you have some that are more staxy, and then you have some that are more turbo. What made you choose to want to play the deck like more turbo versus the more staxy? I guess like variant. I know you still have a couple like stacks pieces in the deck, but like why
Right.
more the turbo, uh, like shell? I guess rather than like the staxy shell.
Great question. I think I have kind of found myself gravitating towards that direction because I think that's something that has kind of been on a lot of people's minds as kind of once again going back to that like second wave of CDH players is not kind of coming into maturity.
Mhm.
Is I think over the course of the last like 4 or 5 months, I think a large percentage of like the CDH population recognized how powerful politics are in
Mhm.
a CDH game, specifically if you're in a tournament setting. And I have found that like oftentimes I feel more comfortable like talking to solve my way through problems than using permanents to do so.
Mhm.
Just because I don't quite have the experience I think needed to play Stacks well. I think Stacks is probably one of the hardest archetypes to play well, especially in a tournament setting.
Mhm.
And so I have found that based off the skill sets and the talents that I have as a player, Turbo I think just is a little bit more in the direction that like I'm already going. As well as I think Lumra as a commander responds really well to pilot preference.
Mhm.
And so I just found that I was having more fun. I think that like we'll colloquially refer to it as like a bear and a prayer strategy. Um, where as opposed to trying to like lock down the board, I've got like I know exactly what I want to be doing like 3 or 4 turns from now, and all I have to do is stop you from doing anything in the meantime. Titania song this, root maze that. Instead, I think I have found it much more like interesting and exciting and fun for me to put myself in these positions where I have um like I have like a ton of A B combos in the deck, but right now on board I have 3 A parts and 0 B parts, and
Mhm.
trying to like solve that puzzle has been really, really satisfying to me and puts me in positions where I stay like very mentally engaged in the games, but still able to dynamically interact with like whatever's happening. Because I think like a lot of players, I can end up in situations where I get like tunnel visioned or focused on like a particular game plan.
Mhm.
And while it may have been good at the moment of like formulation or inception, right, as soon like now that plan goes out the window. And so I found that leaning towards turbo tends to put me in places where I'm leaning on my more healthy and well developed play patterns
Mhm.
than when I play stacks.
That's
Because like
fair.
you said, I also sometimes struggle either with like anxiety or playing like, is this the right time to go for it? Like, is this a good time to jam? And I think that if I have access to stacks pieces, I will oftentimes going to default to like, oh, I can always just like put a Trinisphere down and then like try to jam here. And so I think those are ways that having stacks pieces in a list, oftentimes I will misplay around them, or I'll be the person who kind of throws the game to the Zerg player who isn't affected by the Trinisphere at all because they're not casting stuff. I think that's a great example. That's why I personally lean towards Turbo. I think people who play stacks, I think something that they've seen is that because it's primarily land stuff, you can really, really shut off most players pretty consistently. Um, but I just personally am not super duper convinced by the efficacy of stacks in the current cEDH climate.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who play stacks versions of Lumra, and I'm very grateful that they're there to explore cards and tech and play patterns that I don't have the patience or the capacity for.
Yeah. No, I think that that's super important anyways. Like I feel like I I understand why people are like driven to want to play stacks. Like it's this thing where in a casual setting it is, or like at least in a more casual setting, it's kind of frowned upon. So people go, oh, I can play this here in like the CDH like scene. But it's like you were saying, it stacks is just such a hard thing because if you're leaning so hard into the stacks plan, you're typically going to give up a little bit more of like reactive, I guess, interaction for more, I guess, like of a proactive type of interaction. And it's like
Mhm.
you sometimes it's just better to get out of the way of the other players and like let them do the thing and
Mhm.
then say, hey, I'm gonna stacks the board now. Whereas like some people
Mhm.
will just like jam a stack space. Like, you look and you're looking at like a Rog Thras list and they've already got Rograk and Thrasios out. And then you've got these other two commanders that maybe like maybe a more control type shell or whatever, and somebody like slams a Draneth, and you're like, hey, we can't really interact with this guy now. Like, he's not gonna be casting stuff like from the yard and doing. He's just gonna go get his land straight into play, draw a bunch of cards, like stuff like that. So I definitely think that makes
already on the battlefield. Dranith doesn't do it. All it stops is me casting Tim, then using my Fierce Guardian. Like that's the that's all. I think my and I've said this multiple times. My favorite way of solving problems is by creating new ones. My poor wife. But so for instance, like the way I would do it with like Lumra is if I see that you are ripping and ready to go on like Xur, instead of like not doing anything action, I can create a hostile enough board state in terms of volatility. Like I can jam with such ferocity that you can't afford to push for one on your turn. Because if you use up your interaction defending your own win and then you get stopped, now I have a free lane. And so Lumra is oddly good at like playing at instant speed. And so instead of holding up counter spells or interaction, I'll just hold up win attempt essentially. And I think that is something I prefer because I can still like if there's a Rock Thrash player in between you and me and they've got one Chain of Vapor or they've got one Snap, I can much more confidently say like, look, I'll just exile Lumra to Food Chain and then leave her in the command zone, right? She costs 16 now. Sure, I've got combo pieces on board, but I'll have to tap out. So I'm not winning this turn. I absolutely can win next turn, but I want you to have information for interaction for Xur. And if you want to push, if you want to use up their interaction and clear the way for me, go for it. But I think that's a way. For instance, like I think that's something Blue especially good at is they're like, oh, instead of getting a Necropotence, I'll just get a Smothering Tithe. And they put you in positions where like the best deck in the format having access to mana and card how less scary than whatever is going on. And so I think that's a lesson I've learned from some of the more meta decks, is that like don't try I instead of trying to like solve problems by like, oh, I'm gonna put Tangle Wire in so that Rockgrass isn't able to do as much. I don't want to make other decks weaker. I want to make myself stronger. And then exercise discernment and good decision making in those decisions to be like, okay, I'm not going to force you to use your Force of Will, your Mind Break Trap, and your Force of Negation. I'm going to make you use a couple of them, but if I get the sense that I'm using all the interaction you have and I'm not going to be able to fight through it to get to a win, I'll stop just shy of the win and I'll say, fast a turn, Roxai, have at it, buddy. There's a Force of Will waiting in the wings for you. Go out there and get it, buddy.
That's funny, man. Heck yeah. I think I feel like that is important. Like what you were just saying too, with like when you don't have access to, I guess like just all these different colors that give you such good card quality, like it's really important to, I don't know, like read the table, like pick those windows and like try to be good. Like I think that's one area where I've always been pretty bad at with Blue Farm is like, because your main combo lines typically are all like non-creature spells, you have to be at least somewhat decent, unless you can obviously just like uncounterable silence effect, but you have to be pretty good at like picking those windows and just saying, hey, okay, like I feel confident that I could like go for it and get there, because I feel like everybody immediately when they see Blue Form sitting at the table, like they already are afraid of it. And so I just immediately was like, oh no, I'm not going to play that. I'll just play this other big scary guy in the zone. And then people for some reason immediately go, he's got Necropotence. And then everybody just starts beating the crap out of my life total. And I'm like, leave me alone.
Blue Farm McKinnon's strength, I think what they are multifaceted, very complex decks to play. I think one of their consistent strengths is their ability to make a one attempt second. They can afford to wait and not wait at the consequence of their game plan. Kinnan can just acquire a ton of mana and then spin into like whatever they want. And same thing with like Blue Farm. They're not drawing cards and generating mana isn't that bad of a game plan. So putting yourself for instance in Lumra, I think it's land tutors. I think in Xur it's enchantment tutors. Putting yourself in positions where you can jam, you just get that Necropotence out and you just have it. You just have the nuts. But you can also put yourself in situations where you're like I think, me and you communicating to a third player who's not the Blue Farm player, we can say, I think we can all see there's a risk side. There's a smoke. If we waste up our interaction on each other, we're all kind of hoes. So how about this? What if I agree? I'm just going to go get a mirror made, right? All I'm doing is putting myself on the power level of blue farm. You know, all I'm doing is keeping parity with these other super decks at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, instead of you being the only one fighting blue farm, now we're fighting blue farm. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You know, or with like, you know, Lumra, you know, I'm holding up, you know, like an Elvis Reclaimer. And sure, it could be like a Pit of Offering to hit someone's like LED and stuff on a breach line. Or I can use it to go get a mirror pool or a combo piece. Either way, I'm putting myself in a situation where I'm able to, at my own whim, choose if I'm interacting defensively or offensively, as opposed to Stax pieces relatively, in a permanent way, commit yourself to one game plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think to find that with even within a turbo shell, you still have a lot of opportunities to interact with other people. To answer your question, that's I think because of flexibility, personal preference,
Mm-hmm.
and the type of games I would like to see myself playing in are why I lean towards a turbo shell.
That makes sense. So now I am curious because I feel like I don't know if it's the same way for you, and it may honestly even be a good thing for you because I feel like you want Lumra to get like removed a lot of the time. So like, yeah. So
No, don't remove my commander, please. No, no, please don't.
Do you feel like you catch more attention, or like not flight, but like do you feel like you get more attention when you sit down at the table because you're playing this thing that is like unique and fringe and people may be afraid of it, or do you feel like people do tend to still like gravitate towards like they put their attention on the decks that are like pretty popular? Because I feel like especially with Xur, I've always said, and for you obviously like we were talking about the removal, it's probably a little bit better, but I feel like one of the things that like Kennen and like, you know, like Blue Farm and like TNT and some of these decks do well is the fact that like you can remove their commanders, but it kind of feels bad to say, okay, like I'm going to Swords of Plowshare this Timna. But like everybody, I think in their right, like can justify like, oh, I'm going to Swords of Plowshare this Xur, or like
Yeah.
maybe even in their mind, they're like, I'm going to Swords of Plowshare this Lumra or whatever. But obviously for you, that's good. But like, do you find that you catch more attention because you're playing something that's more fringe?
What an interesting question. I think I would say it's definitely a coin flip.
Okay.
And so I think I'll start over here, and then I'll come back to the question you just asked. A lot of times in CEDH we talk about brewer's advantage.
Mm-hmm.
This concept that because you put a fringe list together, you have access to a layer of unknown information, which then obfuscates where people are supposed to interact, resulting in it being easier for you to win.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is a corresponding brewer's disadvantage, which I think you just talked about, which is something that is unknown always represents a greater existential threat than something that is known. And if you are playing a deck that where you have brewer's advantage, you are putting the blue farm, the Kennen, the rock thrust, the rock side player in a situation where they can say, look, you know I'm getting Seedborn. You know I'm gonna try and get an underworld breach in play. We don't do either of us really know how Arkham Daxon works? Like, come on. And so now what's happened is the power balance at the table has shifted. And it's not because anyone has played a card or put any permanence into play. It's because this social political dynamic is revolving around information. And someone who is playing a well-known, very strong deck like Blue Farm, but it's kind of boring. Like a lot of people don't play Blue because they're uninterested. It relies on like technical skill. Mm-hmm. You're not gonna like shove some like random like Estrid's evocation card in and then just like blow everyone blind. No Blue Farm players ever won with like Underworld Breach and everyone else go, I can't believe you cracked the code. like that's why I think people don't play it, is because like what it takes to be really good at Blue Farm and Kennen, play a deck past when it becomes like boring, and then you enter this other area where you now have developed fundamentals, where you're able to play the deck in a whole way, in a similar way to where you talked about how you look at, as opposed to, right, you bring this like mono green commander from Bloomburrow, or you take this Esper commander, or if and any of these like interesting, like any deck that you are going to like message your friends about and be like, check out this cool list I put together. You are creating a window for your opponent's end game to say, oh God. And so returning back to it, I I think that while I do catch strays because I'm a fringe deck, I think I far more often catch strays because my opponents are scared.
Yeah.
And what I have learned is that because of like the complicated nature of the deck, I am not able to cross that bridge of fear via information. Right? You know, I think, for instance, like playing against a Zerta player, they can explain to me how their combo works. If I'm playing against an Oscar player, they could tell me every single card on their 99. It doesn't matter. I am one dumb motherfucker. So no amount of information is going to fix stupid. So if I'm in situations and someone's like, I'm going to Path of Exile like Lumra, I can't say, do you see a mirror pool? Because that means nothing, especially because I have put them in a position where they're playing scared. Yeah. And so if I'm trying to like educate them into like making what I believe is the correct decision, I'm playing like a loser. So instead of trying to convince them that that Blue Farm is scarier, right? Instead of trying to take them from kind of scared into really scared, I think that the best opportunity is just to, in as many ways as possible, encourage your players to play in the most smart and educated fashion that they can. And sometimes that includes saying like, yeah, I'm about to win. You know, in the game you're playing, I think the correctly right it'd be like, yeah, this is a very, very force of willable win attempt. and sure, you're going to take one on the chin. You're kind of biting the bullet. But what that player is doing in that situation is they are putting the power back in your hands. They're reminding you that you got your hand at 2 and 10, and that you are a player who is capable of making smart and informed decisions. And in the same way that you should force of will my Lumra, you better save that silence for their next up. And so I think that's where I found that while I definitely can I catch some strays, I think it also has encouraged me to be like a better politicker. And that like, you know, if someone comes to the correct decision and they're like, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to like Chain of Vapor, Amulet of Vigor, that I'm not supposed to fearmonger. Right, I'm not supposed to like bully them and to say like, "Who told you that?" You know, like, but instead, like, I only have access to so much interaction, and so if let's say there's 10 pieces of interaction on the table, if I have to eat 2 of them, in order for the other 8 to still be in a position to be used responsibly at the right time, I'll take that.
Yeah. No, dude, I think that's. Oh, sorry. Go.
No, you go.
No, I think that's so funny though, because like that actually, I feel like that makes a ton of sense. Like I feel like one of the greatest things that Ian said to me was the idea of like, yes, but like when it comes to politicking, rather than just saying like, I'm not a threat, I'm not a threat, I'm not a threat. Because when you see somebody doing that, I feel like the alarm bells start going off. You're like, okay. But a lot of times people will just ask me like, hey, what does your deck do? And I'm more than willing to like explain to them, because it's like you said, I'm way more afraid of like the unknown. I mean, that's why like when you hear a bump in the night, people turn the lights on, because they don't want to be like, yeah, they don't want to be stumbling through the dark going, oh, what's around the corner? Like we like to know. So I'll just absolutely tell them, be like, yeah, I'm just like, this is what my deck does. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and give you a heads up. But then I feel like one thing that has actually been beneficial for me is because we play so much on the channel, and like we're constantly building different decks, and I'm trying to brew stuff that people would want to see. I've played other decks, or I've at least like messed around with them. So like there's times where we'll sit down at the table and someone will say like, what does this deck do? And like people won't answer, and I'll immediately be like, this, and I'll explain. I had somebody get so mad at me one day because like I played Dargo Timna because I think the deck's fun, and I've even got the chance to talk to Kellen about it, like when we were at Pool Priority, which was fun, and he was looking over my list and like giving me some advice. And so I sat down that day with a Dargo Timna pilot, and I was like, he started to do stuff, and I didn't have interaction, so I was kind of like, hey, look, like I like if there's any way that I could potentially encourage you to like interact here, like I'm willing to give up some information that I've got. Like this is like this is one of the combo pieces that's going to allow this deck to really start popping off, yada, yada, yada. Like whatever you need to feel comfortable to like interact here. Like I said, I can give up some information, just doing stuff like that where you're not just being like, not me, this person. Yeah. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Me and Logan were just talking about this actually, because we were playing at a tournament where one of the games was streamed. Me and him were talking about how one of the players was what we would consider a volatile player, where they are making decisions that are hard to predict And when they make those decisions, they're hard to also like talk out of it,
Mhm.
you know? And we were having the conversation of how we would both prefer, you know, and, I mean, I think in general, it's a good policy. You want to be playing against the best opponents possible because that's just how you grow.
Yeah.
But also, like, if I'm at a CDH table and you used the word trigger happy earlier, if I get the sense that someone's, one of my first priorities is to like de-escalate whatever is causing them to like, you know, hit the eject button. Because if you are playing optimally, then I can think about what is the optimal play here, and I can arrive at the same conclusion you are, and then we're working with the same information.
Mhm.
And it's much easier to have a dialogue about should or shouldn't be done. But if you're talking to me and I am scared as the day is long, and I'm ready to jump ship at whatever point on the information train I'm at without getting to the destination of like the right conclusion, you are no longer able to meaningfully predict what I'm going to do as a CDH player. And now that means your decision making is never going to be more than 75. And so that's where like I try as a personal policy to try and like keep pods as calm as possible, vibes as good as possible. And there's not an altruistic thing about it. I just I just don't have the mental energy. What's the most random thing that could happen right now? And so when I'm playing a list that inspires people to play poorly. When you have a 17/17 creature, you know, coming down the pike at you, right? That inspires you to play poorly. I'm still, however, trying to keep you calm, trying to keep you collected, because I want you being the best CDH player that you can, so that when I'm thinking, what is he going to tutor for with her, I'm able to do so with significantly greater accuracy than if you're pissing your pants.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
Yeah. So, but that's the like. No, I would very much agree. Like sometimes you catch strays because people don't know what you're doing and they're scared,
Mhm.
and sometimes you're able to with education say like, I need a land and tapper, I need a land sec outlet, and I always need both of those. And they'll say like, oh, okay, well you have neither, so I'm just gonna not use this spell. Or other times, you know, then they still look like, I get it, but like I'm not gonna know when I do need to interact. And so then you can have the discussion of like, okay, well, do you have two pieces of information? Because if you only have one, I'm totally comfortable just stopping right now. You know, if you are dead set on Path of Exiling my Zur, I don't have to tutor because it's a May ability, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, like if you have dug your heels in, if you were going to, I just want tutor, right? And then because I am that committed to you having access to it, you can always use it on me, right? If you don't use it, just use it next turn when I go to attack.
Mm-hmm.
But I would way rather you have that for the cannon. You know, I think that's a great way where we as players that generate some of that fear in pods can exercise some restraint, so that we ourselves are lowering the threat level or lowering the level of tension, just by exercising a little discernment and some patience.
Absolutely. So now this was something that I wanted to ask you about because obviously, like in Lumra, you just have such a huge like mass just of lands. Like there are so many lands in the deck. I think I looked at your deck and you have like 52 lands in it currently.
But
So
Edge of Eternity's going up to 56, baby.
there you go, bro. So how do you go about resolving mulligans with that deck whenever you just have like such a huge amount of lands? Like, are there certain ones that you're looking for in your hands, or are you trying to like keep a minimal amount of lands so that you hit more like off of Lumra? Like, what is the goal there as far as like resolving mulligans with Lumra?
That I love that question. I think one of the things I love about it is that whenever someone joins the Discord, there's like an 80% chance that that's the first question they ask. It is like, how the hell do I evaluate a starting seven and this absolute monstrosity of the list? I think one of the first things that I'm looking for, and this is something that's very deceptive about the list, is that for a mono green list, it is absolutely abysmal at generating green pips. While you have a lot of really solid interaction on your land base with things like Pit of Offerings, Vesuva, Garrick Sanitarium, the vast majority of high quality interaction lands are going to be colorless. You know, being a mono green list, we can only afford to run so many colorless sources before we're no longer able to like cast Nissa or Endurance or our commander. So that's one of the first things I'm also often looking for is like what's castable. Like sure I have, you know, a Birds of Paradise. But if all I've got is like an Ancient Tomb and a Mana Vault, sure, I technically have access to a lot of mana, but not actionable mana.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm often looking for is access to colorless sources. Another thing I'm looking for is a strong sense of identity. While I do lean more towards turbo, the deck can grind pretty well with some Blossoming Tortoise or 6. And there are a few Stax pieces like Tabernacle or Collector Oof. And so depending on what the pod requires in seeding order, right? If I'm in seed 1 against, a couple mid-range decks, I'm going to be much more comfortable mulliganing super, super deep to try and find some weird like Mycosynth Garden LED interaction where I can just jam a Lumra out as quickly as possible. As opposed to if I'm in seed 4 against a Rog Side, like a Rog Thras, or these decks that are known for having pretty explosive starts. I don't know if I want to be the first one making a win attempt in that situation because I'm just gonna, someone's gonna have a force negation for my aim of the vigor, and then I'm just out of the game. So I'm in a situation like that. I may be looking for a more safe hand, like Sylvan Library is like always a great start, or something that just gives me options down the road, like an Archdruid's Charm, or like a 6 or something like that. Is oftentimes where I'm looking at. It's incredibly pod dependent. And also like many monocolored decks, it is very easy to miss small interactions. So for instance, Song of the Dryads allows you to turn any permanent into a colorless land. So if I'm able to get, if I have a Soul Ring and a basic forest, a Song of the Dryads, and a Vesuva, I'm able to have a turn 2 Song of the Dryads for heuristic study. Then I can have my Vesuva enter as a heuristic study. Right? So with 4 cards in mono green, I've just gotten a turn 2 heuristic study. I think that's a great example of like a very niche interaction that you need to have like 100 of in order to like confidently mulligan, which is a great example of how I think the deck is both like very fun and you can pick it up and play a few games and do really, really well. But I think mulligans are one of the hardest things to do well in Lumra. But to kind of summarize it really quickly, you need green pips, you need a game plan, and then you need options for if that first game plan doesn't really work. And even if I have I'm down to 4, if I don't have those 3 things, I've played the list enough, I'm very confident going to a 3 because at the sake of card quality, we're going for synergy. And if we don't have that synergy, it doesn't matter if we have 3 lands. It doesn't matter if we might get somewhere on turn 4. You are just already out of the game if you aren't able to have some form of game plan together in the mulligan phase.
I got you. So now, as far as as the game progresses and you start to see as it progresses and things get drawn more and more out, do you find that your game plan shifts as you go from early to mid to late game, or is it pretty consistent? You're just looking for your opportunity to jam. How does your game shift as the game progresses and draws out longer and longer?
As a turbo player, I'd feel comfortable saying that upwards of 60% of the time, my initial game plan is some form of early Lumra cast. And then in terms of the options, I'm looking for either an untapper so that when all those lands come from the battle graveyard into the battlefield, I'm then able to keep jamming, or a sack outlet so that after casting Lumra, I am able to then kind of start to piece things together. So that is generally the average game plan I have for the first 2 or 3 turns is I want to cast Lumra and then have something.
Yeah.
If all I have is a Lumra cast, then I'm going to have a really scary bear with a lot of basic force in play. And then that's sure, it's great for a casual table, but it's not until you have that Amulet of Vigor or until you have the Spring Heart and Antuga that things really begin to popping off. So after the first Lumra cast, I'm then looking for some form of flexibility, whether it be a land tutor for a shifting land, which is then going to let me turn anything that's in my graveyard into something on the battlefield, which is, if you're in green, you gotta be playing. Or if it's hyper late, I'm trying to hold open as many land tutors available as I can, whether it's an Urza's Cave, an Elvish Reclaimer, or an Elvish Reclaimer, or like a crop rotation or something like that, because both my combo potential and my interaction is staple to land base. So what's most common, I think, is that I will put myself in a position where either I can go for win attempt or I can stop someone else's. And then based off context clues, that's how I decide if I'm supposed to keep jamming or like wait and hold up interaction. So for instance, you have a lot of lands like, for instance, if I have a Shia and a Lumra in play, if I crack a crop rotation to get a Vesuva, since Lumra is a land as a result of a Shia's static ability, I can keep having Vesuva enter as an infinite number of Lumras that keeps bringing itself from the graveyard to the battlefield. So that's a win attempt. But if I have zero defense for a snap or a snapback or any interaction, what I will probably do is hold up that crop rotation so that I can also get like a Talon Gates for if it looks like some devoted druid player is about to generate so much mana. And I'll either wait to see if it's in a situation where I'll play on top of them, or just be honest with myself and say, I have 1 point of interaction and 3 opponents I need to stop. This is probably more likely going to be a draw than a win. And if I can use a win attempt to, I'm putting myself in a situation where the worst possible outcome is 1 point, and that is not a bad place to be in a tournament.
Fair enough. Do you find that it, like, when you're playing the deck at a tournament, do you feel like, do you notice that you end up with draws pretty often, or because you're more of a turbo deck, do you find that like you kind of jam early, or like other people will try to like jam, maybe stop early, and then somebody finds that win like mid game? Like what has been your experience with that?
I think I do find myself ending up in draws. In this last tournament I played, and I almost ended up with 4 draws. But in the last 2 games, I was like, no, I'm gonna like push. I wasn't playing Lumra though, and I think that's how. Question. I think me as a player, going back to that earlier conversation of like, based off like my inexperience and my immaturity, I often will like be like, oh, I don't know if I've got what it takes. There's an opportunity to just take 1 point. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for it. I think even when I'm not playing Lumra, I sometimes will settle for draws when I'm supposed to like push through that fear, push through that interaction, and get to the win that's on the other side.
I got you.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple other Lumra pilots in our area, and I think that oftentimes Lumra will draw as a result of kind of like a rock size syndrome almost. You just put 3 or 4 attempts on the stack, and your opponents are able to stop your 4th, but they can't stop the next one. So you just like, after like using up like 5 counter spells, the table just like agrees. And so I think that's a play pattern that the deck is like relatively good at. And we go back to that ideology is I try to build it around like solving problems by creating them. So if there is another player that can like maybe be stopped and they have a lot of interaction, I will just use up all their interaction on my own. No longer able to protect their own win attempt. They are significantly more conducive towards the draw conversation. Hopefully that kind of like answers the question.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I definitely get what you're saying there. So then this is something I'm curious, because I didn't, for some reason, this never even crossed my mind until I actually read your primer. So obviously with like the prevalence of like Etali, especially because it's getting more and more popular, and the lands that are in your deck stay exiled, how do you plan for that matchup? Like when you sit down at a table and you see an Etali when you're on Lumra?
Well, first I take a deep breath, and then I pick 5 things I can see, and then 4 things I can touch, and then 3, or whatever coping mechanism you have. Breathe into a brown paper bag or whatever it is you're going to do. No, I think one of the things I love about playing Etali is I think it's also very good analog. Right. Another card that Etali also plays is there's a relatively like decent amount of Stax pieces that hit lands. Right. You've got the Harbinger of the, I think it's Harbinger of the Seas. I think people just call it Flown. And then you've got Magus of the Moon and Blow. Which is a way that like monocolored decks oftentimes will cannibalize each other at odds, right? A really easy way for Magda to stay in the game is good lands. But I'm another monocolored deck, and the only way I can stay in the game is lands. And so theoretically, Blood Moon should be the silver bullet that just kicks my deck to the curb. But my experience is, one, I don't know why. I'm surprised by it every time. I don't know why after all these years I still keep forgetting that the maggots of the moon see semi-regular play. I think I've gotten to the point where while it absolutely stops me in my tracks for sure, it also puts me in a position. I think of it somewhat similar to being in fourth seed. If there is a land stacks piece in play, as a lands deck, I can literally do whatever I want. I can put as many like Amulet of Vigor and Zurin Orb effects in play because I am unable to combo off based off the stacks of piece that's in play. And all I have to do is wait for the blue farm player that needs it gone so that they can cast their silence to get rid of it for me, and then I take action. Or same thing with the Etali. You're completely right. Like Etali has the potential to exile all of the most important parts of the deck. Right? Going up to 56 lands. If I get remarkably, catastrophically unlucky, Etali is capable of exiling over half of my entire deck in a way that is unrecoverable for me. However, going back to that level of layering, while it may take me off of my easiest to access combos, more than likely it's not going to be able to take me everything. And so while it may remove 70%, 80%, 90% of my ability to win, at this point in cEDH, I'm trying harder and harder to not focus on that 90%, but focus on that 10%. Right? Jason, one of my good friends who plays Blue Farm, I've seen him decon past his Thassa's, his Breach, his Brain Freeze, and his LED, and he is still dialed in and there for the win because he's got OBM wheel. And so worst case scenario, right, he's able to take out one player with the wheel itself, take out the other player with the Orc army it creates, and then use whatever means possible to not let that third player still in the game win, and then just like through their defenses on the next turn. Right? Even though he's been taken off of most of, if not all of the traditional win lines, there's still a window. And in Lumra, it's very similar. Right? It's you've got Garrick Sanitarium lines that let you have your opponents draw through their entire decks. You've got Vesuva stuff that lets like me have access to like a Thassa's Oracle in a weird way. Or, you start punching face. Bloody Noses are still a pretty decent way to get to the top in cEDH. So it definitely represents a challenge. And I've been in more than one situation where an Etali through like 15, 20 cards in my deck. And it feels bad every time. Hate it, hate it, hate it. But at this point in cEDH, I am committed to the fact that until someone reports the win on top deck, I'm still in the game. And so if there's a Blood Moon effect, I can resist whatever I want because I literally cannot win. And if there's an Italian play, that does give me some form of social capital of like, you guys all saw half of my combo. Not that I'm completely out of the game, but that does make this Nissa like way less scary than it was last turn. So I try to view it more as an opportunity than an obstacle, but I will definitely concede it is very much an obstacle.
Fair enough. That's actually, I feel like that's a really good mindset to have around things because it's really funny that you brought up like just even the OBM wheel type situation. There have been games where I have literally like especially whenever I was first like on Zer and I was learning the deck and I was tweaking and editing things, but you would see like your Thassas get exiled. Like say somebody has like a rest in peace type of effect, they will you or somebody wills your Thassa's exiled, and now you're like, man, like I don't have another win con in this deck. Like I'm not gonna be able to win. But then all of a sudden you start looking at the cards in your hand and you're like, oh wait a minute, like I can piece this together. And like next thing you know, you're finding like some weird, there's a Kennen on board and you've got a Smothering Tide and a Fairy Mastermind, like, and you're like, oh, all I need is a clone or some like theft effect, or you're looking and you're like, oh, I've got my own wheel and an OBM, or oh, I've not to mention like if I go into a Necro turn and I just like, you say you're protected under like some kind of a silence effect and you can like flash the Bowmaster in and then wheel while in your instep and just make everybody draw like 30 plus cards and just, bolt the table like out. So, I mean, like, I think that that's a really good mindset to have. I feel like too many people will just like, they'll get stopped once and it's almost like they just immediately concede. And so I think that actually is really good. I'm glad that I asked that question because I think that was a really good response to that.
And not to derail us by opening up the door to an adjacent conversation, but for me personally, that is why I think it is important that draws be worth points. Because I've been in so many situations. Yes, I technically still have the ability to win, but I don't have the mental fortitude or the time to be able to piece together that win. Right? Either just because I just don't have the energy to like improv in the way that I do to like find the 100th line that might get me to a win. But I think the emotional fuel of like I can still force this game to come to draw, I think has kept many, many, many more players emotionally invested in the outcome of that game than would be the case otherwise. And so that's another situation is like, if a Etali just absolutely bodies me, I can still get a point out of it, right? So that would be another kind of like another thing is like even if you can't win, and me and Austin were actually talking about this recently. I'm still pretty comfortable that most times when people think they can't win, there's got to be something. There's got to be something there. But even if you're in a rare situation where it is truly actual, factual, impossible for you to win, I guarantee there's still a way for you to get a draw. And while that can be really, really frustrating for the player, who's resolving a necropotence and think they have a protected win to then be stopped dead in their tracks and someone to be like, draw, what's up? Like that's a really frustrating experience. But I think the capacity for draws to be worth points are what protects those situations where a player feels like they're out and like they have nothing to do. I think that's a good kind of like salve or a good way to kind of like meet the emotional needs of that player.
I think that's good. So now as far as like tournament performance and things like that, because I know you guys grind quite a bit of like y'all go to a lot of tournaments, you're playing pretty often. How has the deck performed in tournament play for you?
I think I haven't taken it to a tournament in the last 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
And a huge part of that was because, and I don't know if you've experienced this on Xur, I started experiencing challenges on Lumra that playing Lumra more wasn't going to be able to help me with. Specifically, like I have access to Jason, who's just an incredible blue farm pilot, or Logan also is a fantastic control player, oftentimes gravitating around like Sultai and Grixis shells. And it's just, there's almost always one more counter spell at the table than I think there is. And while Lumra has access to a lot of interaction, and it's taught me to look for those windows of the best way to stop people is you wait until they've committed everything and their entire game plan hangs in the balance of this one spell resolving, and then you just kick their legs out from underneath them and timing when you stop a percent. But what Lumra can't teach me is how many counter spells hand. The only way to learn what 7 cards Jason's looking at is to play his blue. Right? The only way I can get a feel for how Logan sees the game is play decks that Logan plays. And so while I am planning on picking Lumra back up and kind of aggressively taking it to Edge of Eternity's come out, I have been on like a little bit of a sabbatical, specifically for the sake of trying to experience a lot more of like the meta decks. I've played Rock Thras, I've played Rockside, played Blue Farm, playing Kennen right now. When I was taking it to tournaments more consistently, I think I had a relatively similar experience to you of pretty consistently able to pick up a win or two and occasionally making it to top 16, but having a hard time having a hard time seeing that consistency that I really, really, really want to see out of a list. I think there's some other pilots in the Build-A-Bear workshop who've done a really, really good job. I think Disturbed recently took it to the top 16 at Land Go, which was a huge turn. Alec also did really, really good at Cradle to the Guild. But that was why I took essentially a timeout in a tournament play is right. I don't want to be the best Lumra pilot. I want to be one of the best CEDH players. And I think if that's your goal, you have to play more than just one deck. But I think that most people who play it, you're likely going to see at least one win because it can put up one attempt. But yeah, I think with Edge of Eternities, it's almost like if Kennen got like a second Basalt monolith. With the Jund precon, there's like more untappers. There's more things that let you like play additional lands, like exploration effects. So I don't know. I guess the best answer to that question is we'll find out in about a month or two. But yeah, other pilots have been doing meantime. Yeah, and if anyone wants to jump into that Discord, there's always someone taking it somewhere. Always someone taking it somewhere.
Heck yeah, man. So I remember one of the last times I talked to you about the deck, you said you started experimenting more with it in the 99. Like I remember there was I think it was a Gruul list that you showed me where you were experimenting with it in the 99. Have you had like much success with that, or have you been trying different things with Lumra in the 99 recently?
I put it in Wandering Minstrel, which was a lot of fun. But then near the very tail end of Final Fantasy, Rydia got spoiled. So I also put Rydia in Wandering Minstrel. And then I just had this experience of like every game, it wasn't like, even though Wandering Minstrel is in the command zone, I was secretly trying to get Rydia into play as quickly as I could. It's like, why not? And I built it mainly as a Jund shell. So it's like, why don't I just play Rydia at the command zone, put Lumra in the 99? I think I've experienced like a very similar play style that Kyle has on his kind of like Regicide Landfall Corvold. In that like in cEDH we play so many fetches, and if you're in Gruul or Jund, there's so many like Lin sacrifice effects that are really really good. That like and Rydia, what I've been seeing is that like so I'll play Rydia most traditionally in turn 2, and it has this landfall. You rummage, so you discard, then you draw. So what the most consistent play pattern I've been seeing is I get Rydia out. I then get Lumra into play. Let's say I put 6 lands into play, 8 lands into play. We'll say 8. If I have Life from the Loam or Golgari Grave Troll, I can then discard it to the Rydia trigger and then dredge it back on the draw for so let's say I have Golgari Grave Troll, which is 6. Mm-hmm. You know, if I have 6 landfall triggers and I'm dredging 6 times, I'm putting 36 cards in the graveyard.
Yep.
Which means I'm consistently able to, in a Gruul deck, able to cast Underworld Breach with well over a third of my deck on turn 3. A third of my deck which has been really, really fun. And then, yeah, I think Kyle from That's a Good Card, I think, has been playing Lumra in the 99 of course for a really, really long time. And, you know, because then you have access to like Squandered Resources and Rain of Filth effects. And he's been seeing a lot of success there. And then there's a local player here who like is also like a lands guy, and you know he's put Lumra in Glarb, he's put Lumra in like Gitrog, and he plays everything, and so I think it's fun. I think it's a card that you can put like a bunch of different places. It definitely like you can't just like shove it into like Rog Thras. I think it's not going to get you like a ton of value there, but I think that as cEDH players continue to try to emulate Amulet Titan in a format where the Titan part of it is banned. I think if you're anywhere near that strategy, Lumra is a card that you're usually looking at least once, if not twice.
Heck yeah, dude. That's cool. I do love asking this question whenever I see people are playing like a weird fringe commander. Do you have like a favorite story or win or anything like experience that you've had with Lumra? Like just something that immediately comes to mind whenever you think about the deck?
Yeah, I think the two things that the one that comes to mind to me is I think the 5th or 6th time I was playing the deck, a blue farm went before me that didn't have access to their Thasses anymore because they exiled it to a Force of Will, and they didn't have access to like any wheels, so they milled everyone out. So everyone's libraries on their graveyards. I untap. All I have access to is like 5 or 6 lands, but I was able to sacrifice the E-Zone, cast Dryad's Revival from my graveyard, which lets me put any permanent, any card from my graveyard into my hand. And I got an Aftermath Analyst. So in my upkeep before I drew, I cast the Aftermath Analyst, activated its ability to then bring all my lands that the blue player had milled into my graveyard field. And then was just able to combo off there. And anytime there's like a I've won the game, all I have to do is like pass the and I get an upkeep, and then I'm able to snipe the win from underneath them. Oh, it feels good. Oh. Yeah, that felt really, really good. There definitely have been a lot of times where I had a win and didn't realize it until I was like driving home, And then like there I am at a stoplight, and then it just like hits me that I had a win attempt, and that is an equally frustrating moment. But yeah, I think that's a good example of a time where I thought I was dead to rights, but then I'm looking at my board and I'm like, oh, E zone's pretty good. I wonder if there's anything you can flash from, flipping through 80, 90 plus cards in my graveyard. I'm like, I think I can work this. And yeah, I was able to sneak out a win, and yeah, that felt really really good.
Heck yeah, dude. That's so funny, man. It's always stuff like that, the where I don't know, like it shouldn't happen. Like like you're like this should not happen, but like it's gonna feel so good when it does.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I'm glad I enjoyed it when it happened because that was the one time a Blue Farm player was like, yeah, let me mill the graveyard deck.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you just want to talk about as far as the deck goes? I think I've asked like a lot of the questions and stuff that I've had. I know we didn't necessarily go completely over like win cons and stuff, which I'll have your deck linked and like the primer and stuff too. But like, and we've kind of talked a little bit about it just like throughout the conversation. But is there anything that you just want to talk about the deck, or anything you want to say about the deck?
Well, I think you brought up win cons. Almost all of them are going to revolve around some form of infinite land recursion. A lot of which can be done at like instant speed, and I think that it is fun in that it is very very difficult to interact with because a large portion of it is usually through triggered abilities, sometimes with activated abilities on top of it as well. And so that can be really really fun. But also like we were talking about earlier, and I think we were talking about this when you mentioned that you play Zur. I'm a huge fan of like find whatever fringe gnarly crazy deck you want to play, and if you're also someone who wants to play in tournaments, you got to put the legwork in to play some form of like popular meta deck. Not that it has to be your favorite. Not that you can only play one Lumra game for every 3 Kinning games that you play. But I think that like having a fringe deck that's near and dear to my heart, I think you're gonna always get way 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 more mileage out of it if you are also paying close attention to your friend Blue Farm or Roxai or. So I always try to encourage people to play a little bit of both because I think even Jason, who almost exclusively plays Blue Farm or Kinnan, he is always brewing, always keeping an eye on stuff. And so yeah, my deck is also in my list is far and away from the only viable version of the list. Like we talked about, Stax players as well, and then even people who very similar to me are still kind of like turbo mid range build. There's many different ways to build the bear, and so I'd want to shout out like a lot of the people over in the Build a Bear workshop. Additionally, a couple other places you might see the bear is in the CriticalEDH League. There's a few people who are there. So if anyone wants to come and join that, it's always a great. Not only do I get the opportunity to play in a lot of tournaments, but I recently moved out of the Denver Metro. A little bit harder to get to my GS than it used to be. So having a really solid place to play online has. And then a couple other times over the course of this, we talk about the value of coaching. And we also offer that over at CriticalEDH. So if you're interested in picking up Lumra, and somehow you aren't tired of listening to my voice yet, hit us up. Born to yap, forced to play, baby.
Heck yeah, dude.
Thank you so much for reaching out to me and asking. It's always fun getting to listen to you guys, and it turns out it's pretty fun talking to you too.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, I appreciate you taking the time too, because I know we've both been just yapping this whole time for a good bit. So I do appreciate it. I feel like that's one of the awesome things about this community, and like me and Chase talked about this even whenever we first got into wanting to build a channel, is just trying to grow our local community, but also like if there are people out there that are contemplating getting into cEDH and then they see our content and they actually get into cEDH, that's the goal. Like that's what I want. And I feel like for some reason, like sometimes people can look at this format and they think that it's like very sweaty, try hard. Like all these people are just like aggressive. They want to win. But then I literally will reach out to people all the time. Like I have no issues talking to people. So I'll just randomly like message somebody, comment on a list, say, hey, what's up, whatever. And people will be like, you actually message them? It's like, we're all people. Like I'll absolutely, I'll text somebody and say, hey, and then you'll get a response and you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then I just start a conversation with them. So I appreciate you like just always being down to chat. Like I sometimes I'll just randomly message you with a question, and you're always down to like answer. Like we'll just kind of get rambling, and then we may not talk again for like a week or a couple days, and then I'll just randomly be like, I'm gonna message Eric and be like, hey, what's up? Just stuff like that. So I really appreciate you guys.
Right back at you, man. I was commenting on how one of your cats was in your videos, and then you sent me a picture, and you're like, "Yeah, we got the variety pack." Cats. But yeah, I think that having started in casual, I think I also had this experience of like, oh, I'm enjoying getting better and better at Commander, but I'm scared to like take the next step into CDH for fear that like as soon as I like cast the wrong spell, people are going to be mean to me. And I think that like no one likes in the same way that we talked earlier about the fear of the unknown. I think that's also very, very when it comes to people converting from casual to CDH or even from other card games to Magic. And I think the more and more that we can open the door for people to come and be a part of the community, the better. As long as we also have like a strong like mentoring culture as well as like inroads for people to move from like inexperience to experience. And so I think, especially recently, the conversation about the cEDH and TDH, I think has been really, really helpful. Austin was saying that like, I think a lot of LGSs are really, really good at getting people kind of familiar with like the format. But then I think sometimes it's when people try to go from just playing with their friends to playing against strangers in a tournament is where people can run into a lot of those roadblocks.
Yep.
So I think the more and more that we can have eyes and ears on what it's like to show up at like a 32 or a 64 player tournament and you're like, yeah, I played a game and it sucked and someone was mean. It was a really, really bad time. But I also had like 3 other games that day. And then, I could go grab pizza with a friend and now we have a channel, right?
Yeah.
Like I think the more that we can share the good and the bad, the more it'll be easier for people to take both in stride as they take the next step forward in their CEDH journey.
Absolutely, man. I 100% agree with that. I think that that's the biggest message for anybody, in my opinion. Like, I was so afraid. I watched play to win content all the time. Like, I played casually with my friends, but I always had that competitive itch from playing Yu-Gi-Oh so much, and I wanted to do like I loved the like Commander just had this itch that it scratched for me that I couldn't get from like the one-on-one. So people would say, "Oh, just go play like Modern, Standard, whatever." I was like, I kind of want to play CDH. But I was just so afraid to go out and play. I literally walked into my LGS one day, and there was a guy that I used to work at a card shop a while back, and there was a guy that was there was a guy sitting there that had actually came into the shop that I worked at forever ago, and he had bought some like Pokemon cards. And the only reason I recognized him was because he had one specific like tattoo that I was like, oh, I remember that. And so I just walked over, said, hey. They were sitting down, getting ready to play a 3-person game. And I didn't technically have all of the stuff for Zer because I didn't know about proxying and things like that. He literally hands me a Pantlaza deck and he's like, here you go, man, try this out. And I literally won the game with the Pantlaza deck. And I was like, this is so much fun. I immediately went home and was like printing off proxies and threw Zer together and was like telling all my friends, like, dude, we got to go play CDH. And so we end our videos all the time with that. But seriously, like, if you're contemplating whether or not you should go play CDH, go play CEDH.
Yeah, I think that while sometimes CEDH can get even sweatier than we as CEDH players are willing to admit, I think that more often than not, it is significantly less salty than almost every casual pod I've been a because I think in terms of like cultural expectations, the idea that if your commander wins the game and you're casting your commander, you better be ready for a counterspell, I think is just like part and parcel with any game you play, as opposed to, my heart goes out to any, Sir Conrad player, who just spent like $200-300 like buying all the individual cards at a casual pod and they can't resolve a single spell.
Yeah.
Right. I think that is a far more negative experience than you paying $25 to proxy up some random blue farm list, and then sure, maybe you lose once or twice, but also like everyone else is getting their stuff countered too, right? I just find that in terms of like social dynamics, I just feel like there's a lot less tension at CDH tables. Definitely there are sometimes in a tournament space, and that happens, and that's okay. If you're in top 16 and there's a lot of money on the line, I think it's appropriate for there to be some degree of on edgeness, but especially if you're just jamming on random, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I think it is far more chill, far more friendly than a lot of people know or might expect. And so, yeah, I very much agree with you. The more that we can kind of pave the way of like, you don't even need to bring your own deck. Like there's almost always some decks than they'll ever play present, and they're just happy to see him get used. For us, it's Logan. He always brings a backpack with it feels like 20 different CDH decks.
Yeah.
And someone's like, I don't even want to play blue for him. And Logan's like, perfect. I don't even have it on me. Here's Maelstrom Wanderer. I think is a way that a lot of kind of veterans of CDH have started kind of carrying the torch for their local LGS. And I think the future of CDH is very, very bright. And I'm grateful to be a part of that, both in Denver, but also to hear that that's the case for you guys, both for the format where you guys are, but also for your channel. It's great to see not only other competitors, but creators coming and taking space in this environment. And just the more people, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
No, absolutely, man. And the same thing, I love the stuff that y'all are doing over there. Y'all's y'all's videos are hilarious. I love watching the interactions between you guys. And the thing that and same thing I said earlier, you guys, the way that you portray yourself on the camera is the exact same way that I feel like whenever you actually interact with each other, when people interact with y'all, you're those people. You're not just putting up some persona. You're not trying to look good for the camera. You guys actually enjoy the format. You actually are cool people. So getting to talk and interact with you guys, it just shows the authenticity there. And so I'm looking forward to also see what you guys are doing, seeing the way that you guys have grown the league that y'all have, especially as quickly as it has grown. I think that our channels started about the same time. We put our first video up, I think, towards the very beginning of January, and I want to say you guys started putting up videos either mid-January or February-ish, I think. And so it's been awesome to just see you guys grow, see you guys out in there in the community. It's even something to me and Chase talked about, where just getting out and meeting people, and literally at that tournament, we had the first instance of walking into the tournament, talking. I played against a guy, and then right after the game, he was like, "I love your videos." And it's just little things like that I think are really cool to show that people are paying attention, even if you don't realize they are. People are paying attention. They want what we're able to give and provide. So you are making an impact, and I think that you guys are making a really big splash doing the things that y'all are doing. I'm really excited to see where y'all's channel goes. Y'all are having a lot of very good growth, and so I'm just excited to see what kind of content y'all put out in the future too. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I think we very much feel like we are part of this wave. I think of Cardboard Cookbook with JJ and Adriel, or you and Chase, or all these other all these channels that's around the same time. I think all of us are part of this energy and this movement that comes with just a ton of people playing and loving cEDH. And I think that it's always so much fun for me. I got to play with the Double Sleeve guys the other day. And I think the more that we can interact with each other, not only as cEDH player channels, the better it is for everyone. And so I think that while cEDH is all about the competition, I think the cEDH community is all about the camaraderie.
Yep.
And so I love that. I think everyone just brings their own little special flavor, just their personality to the table. And so that's why I love getting to watch you guys. If someone is out there putting cEDH content, I'm watching it, dude. I'm addicted. Pump it into my veins, dude. Yeah.
Well, even with what you just said there, it's that it was funny because Logan, he commented something one time, or he messaged me one time, and he said something about the rising tide raises all boats or something like that, and I thought that was funny. But I really do feel the community just in general, it's the definition of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You may have big creators, smaller creators, and then micro creators, people that are very tiny, they're just getting started. But I feel everybody is important in helping foster a very inviting, welcoming community, and just helping this thing grow. So I think that I even in same thing, if I think it's very encouraging to see small channels, big channels, whoever, everybody collaborating, doing things together, trying to grow the community, because it shows too just how welcoming and inviting it can be. And if anybody is a small creator or big creator, whatever, if they're watching this and they just want to sit down and chat, even if it's not on camera, I will talk forever. So I have no problems. I could sit here and BS all day. So if somebody ever just wants to reach out, they want to message, whatever, I'm down to chat. I'm down, whatever.
Yeah, that's I was on TikTok the other day, and there was someone, I think they had like 17 followers. They were talking about the right amount of lands that have in a CDH deck. And I remember watching it and thinking to me, this creator, to all 17 of their friends, 10 of which are potentially family members, is as important to the community as like comedian or any of these kind of like giants of the content creation space. I think they are just as important, as is the person who is completely uninterested in content creation. All they've got is this deck that they've brewed that they're really, really excited about, and all they want to do is play in tournaments. I think that like the more types of people we can have in our community, the more that we're able to elevate the floor in the same way that coaching can kind of level the playing field in a really positive way. I think the more we're able to open the door, the healthier and the better it is for everyone. Because I want to play against the best, and I think that like cEDH is always looking for that next best player. And while coming to the end of the 2025 top series, you can definitely see that we kind of have our titans, our monoliths of like the tournament space. If people aren't staying hungry, if they aren't trying to grow, if they aren't, someone's going to take that spot. And I think a very huge part of growing in the content creation space is your ability to collaborate and communicate with other people. Right, because it's a 4-player format, which means inherently none of us gets to get by being alone. Right, we need each other. Right, we can only be here with each other, and so that's why I just love getting to talk to other people, man. I'm just the I know I'm a librarian, but I'm probably one of the old.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah, well, dude, thank you so much for reaching out, and thanks for taking the time. I've really enjoyed the conversation. This is a lot of fun.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you too. Like I said, just taking the time. Is there any last like little things that it related to y'all's channel, or just like anything that you want to plug, like any upcoming events, tournaments, anything like that?
While we definitely are in talks about Mortal Kombat 2, I think the big things right now are if you're interested in playing cEDH, we've got the league. If you're interested in learning about cEDH, we do offer coaching. And if you have a really long commute to work, we've got a podcast that we put out in addition to gameplay or tournament reviews. But yeah, obviously if you're watching this, you probably already watched casting cost stuff, but go watch more casting cost videos.
Thank you. No.
And go listen to them try to pronounce European names. You guys did better than I would do. You guys did way better than I would do.
I'm so thankful Chase has to say the names, because then I get to make fun of him and like just be like, I wouldn't have said it. Like he'll say sometimes, and he'll say it the exact way that I read it in my head, and I'll be like, what are you thinking? And then I'll just
I can't believe you're so ignorant, Chase. Way to be a Philistine, bro. Obviously, it's Giannis. It's but for the grace of God, there go I. I grew up in northwestern Florida, so it wasn't until I was over 18 that I heard a name that was Matthew, Joshua, or Daniel. So, hats off to you guys.
Heck yeah, I appreciate you, man. Yeah, honestly, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing where everything goes. I'm really like, next time y'all have Mortal Kombat, me and Chase have already decided we're coming out. We're definitely gonna go. Yes. We've got to represent. We got to get out there and get some games in. I also want to, at some point, if y'all get the chance, we'd love to get some games in with y'all. Like I said, even if it's not on camera, if it's just like us just chilling, like doing some games. I know y'all are super busy because y'all got a lot going on, but if y'all have some free time and y'all just want to jam some games, dude, I would
absolutely, dude. The reason we're busy is because we're straight up addicted to cEDH. So if you say you want to play a game, I will quit my job. I'll do whatever it takes to play, bro. No, we'll make it happen.
Absolutely, man. Well, I think that's pretty much it. But it's like I said earlier, if you're not already, go play some cEDH.
Yeah, get out there. It can be fun. It's a good space to be. But also, like, I think you definitely have to play differently. Also, there's a cat on your screen now.
Yeah, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
It's
a sleepy cat. It says he's looking for the phone.
Oh no, he should be able to find it. 1 sec. I think Chase actually tried calling me. Give me 1 sec.
Oh, come on, Chase.
I know, right?
What other things can we say about Chase while he's not here?
Absolutely.
He seems like a really nice guy.
What a nice guy.
I would never say that to his face, though.
Probably good. There we go. Yeah, it'll be fine. It's the other video, but who cares? It's working. Can you still hear me fine?
I can still hear you great.
Okay. My bad, man. Yeah, I just texted him back and I was like, hey, man, sorry in a call. But no.
No worries, no worries. Any viewer of CriticalEDH knows that if there's an audio issue, it's connected to this guy. I inspire failure in the technology around me. If anything, you can blame this on me. I don't know how, but I probably looked at your webcam the wrong way or something.
No, you're good, brother.